Welcome to This Explainer. Let's just dive right in, because we've got a seriously fascinating situation unfolding in the aviation industry right now. Today, we're breaking down a massive, looming battle for India's skies. We're going to look at how the price of your very next flight might soon be decided by just one incredibly powerful entity. If you fly at all, you're absolutely going to want to understand what's happening behind the scenes here.
Think about it for a second. Who really decides your ticket price? When you log on, ready to book a flight, and you see that final number on the screen, who actually holds the power over that cost? You probably think, oh, it's just supply and demand. Or maybe it's just airlines fiercely competing to give you the best deal. Well, actually, scratch that. The reality is shifting fast, and the real answer is getting a whole lot more complicated.
Section 1. The Flight Price Decider, the forces controlling your ticket.
Section 2. The 90% duopoly. Who currently controls the market?
So, we're seeing this crazy shift where the actual company that owns the physical airport you're flying out of could potentially be the one setting your ticket price. I know, it sounds kind of like a game of Monopoly, right? But this is playing out in the real world. Now, before a new challenger can even enter the ring, we got to look at the staggering reality of the Indian aviation market today. Just look at this. A massive 90% of every single flight taken in India is currently controlled by just 2 airlines. That leaves a tiny little 10% slice of the pie for the rest of the entire market. It really shows you just how little room there is for outside competition right now.
IndiGo and Air India. Literally. That's it. That is the entire 90%. So, the really crucial takeaway here is that your options as an everyday consumer are incredibly limited. I mean, when 2 absolute giants run the entire show, they essentially get to set all the rules of the game. And this intense concentration, it sets up the perfect storm, an absolute desperate need for a major market challenger to step in and shake things up.
Section 3. Adani's final aviation puzzle. Building an infrastructure empire.
Enter the Adani Group. Now, they are a massive heavyweight player in the world of infrastructure. And looking at that 90% duopoly we just talked about, well, they want in. They are already building this crazy empire from the ground up. Step 1, ports. He already has those. Step 2, logistics. Yep, also his. Step 3, the actual airports themselves. He's got those under his belt too, which brings us to step 4. The actual planes are literally the final missing piece of his grand aviation puzzle. He has the entire ground operation completely locked down. Now he just needs the vehicles that actually take to the sky.
The ambition here is crystal clear. Adani wants in, and there's just one thing left: the planes themselves. The goal isn't just to own the ground the planes land on, right? It's to own the planes too. It's this vision of complete end-to-end control over your entire travel experience, the whole shebang. But as with literally any massive corporate ambition, there is a major catch. Section 4, the 10% rule, the legal roadblock. Because, you can't just buy up the entire travel infrastructure without slamming into some regulatory walls. The biggest hurdle standing in the way? It's called the 10% rule. This is a law that explicitly states that if an entity runs an airport, they cannot own more than a 10% stake in an airline. It's a rule designed specifically to prevent an airport operator from having a controlling interest in the airlines that are flying in and out of their very own facilities. To put it as simply as possible, the guy who owns the runway cannot own the plane, period. It's a mandatory, legally binding separation of the physical infrastructure and the actual airline service. Basically, you can provide the runway or you can fly the plane, but the law says no way can you fully control both.
Section 5. The Unfair Advantage. Why the 10% rule exists. Now, to really understand why this law is so absolutely crucial, just imagine if we removed it entirely. On one side, you'd have your standard airlines. On the other side, you'd have the massive unfair perks of an airport-owned airline. Think about it. The guy who owns the runway is now using it for his own planes. So what happens? Well, his planes magically and conveniently get all the best gates. They get the absolute prime-time flight slots. They get drastically cheaper parking out on the tarmac. Suddenly, everything becomes incredibly conveniently skewed in his favor, while the standard airlines are just left fighting for the scraps.
And the crucial takeaway here? That is not competition. Letting one single company control the gates, dictate the time slots, and just manipulate the parking costs for its own fleet of planes completely destroys any semblance of a fair market. It creates this impossible environment where no standard airline could realistically ever compete on a level playing field.
Section 6. Monopolies, or cheaper skies, the stakes for your wallet.
Ultimately, these massive corporate maneuvers and legal battles, they aren't just boardroom dramas. They directly impact the very real risks of the aviation industry and, more importantly, your personal finances. To really understand the stakes, we got to look at recent history. This right here is the aviation graveyard. Kingfisher, Jet Airways, Go First. All dead. Gone. These are massive, established Indian airlines that just went under in this incredibly cutthroat, unforgiving market. It's a really stark reminder that if things go wrong, the collapse is total. This market is brutal, and survival is absolutely never guaranteed.
So why does all this matter to you? Because this whole situation directly decides what you are going to pay for your very next flight home. Whether this market remains a tight duopoly, whether an infrastructure giant manages to bypass the rules to own both the runway and the planes, or whether fair competition actually survives, these outcomes are going to literally dictate that final number you see on your ticket.
So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative question to chew on. Are we heading towards cheaper skies fueled by fierce competition, or are we watching the rise of one single empire controlling absolutely everything you fly on? The battle for the skies is happening right now, and the outcome is going to literally shape how the world travels, so definitely keep an eye on how this plays out. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.